Welcome to Why Sew, the podcast where some of your favorite sewing personalities and rising stars share what motivates them to create using needle and thread. I'm your host, Jason Prater, and with me today is Becky Thompson of Power Tools with Thread. I'm really excited to speak with her today and find out why she sews. So, hey, welcome to the podcast, Becky.
Hey, Jason. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. I'm excited to get to talk to you today. Before we get going, maybe you can let our audience know, or at least the ones that don't already know you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, do you consider yourself a sewist, an embroiderer, a quilter? A sort of what is your main thing? And just tell us all about you.
Wow. Okay. So in those categories, can I say all of the above?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm from South Texas. I live just southeast of San Antonio, Texas, in a little bitty town called Lavernia. And not a native, but got here as fast as I could. And I'm a military brat and then a military Air Force retiree myself. I retired from the U.S. Air Force after 20 years.
Oh, wow.
In 2003. And then I was a federal civilian for 17 years. And then from there, I had started the channel back in 2019. I have a YouTube channel called Power Tools with Thread. We have a Facebook group of Power Tools with Thread Facebook group that's got about 15,000 members in it.
Nice.
And my channel is just over 44,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I've also got an Instagram by the same name and a blog by the same name. And the blog's been around for a long, long time. Back when I was sewing garments and whatnot. But yeah, so I started the channel really officially in 2019 and it just took off. I think that people just want to talk to someone or listen to someone who shares the same passion that they have. So
Right.
It's so funny. My viewers will send me pictures of them watching me on the big screen. And that's really a weird thing.
I love it.
To see that. Yeah. The channel got to be so successful and so busy that I fully retired from federal service in August of 2020. And this is my full-time job now. It's what I do.
Nice. You're my hero. You've retired twice now.
Yeah. Well, government double dippers. Yeah. Wait till I start collecting Social Security, then we'll really be on a roll.
Nice. I love it. So that's awesome. It's funny. I've done 10 or 12 of these podcasts so far, and quite a few share similar stories. Not all, but lots of folks, this ends up being a second or third or fourth career for them. And it's a cool theme that I see throughout our industry where people try to turn their passion into something more than that. And oftentimes a very successful business. So that's fantastic to see another one of those. Besides your business, I really want to kind of dig into what drives you to do what you do. How'd you get started and that kind of stuff? So maybe you can share with us, like, what was your first memory of sewing? How far back does that go for you?
So my first memory is my mother. We lived in base housing on Randolph Air Force Base, and she was sitting behind I don't even know the make of the machine. It was a giant green heavy machine. And she would sit in there and South Texas, we didn't live, of course, this was in the early, like 1970, 69 or 70. And we didn't have air conditioning. And so, you're
South
from
Texas.
the South, know how hot. Yeah, yes. It's cruel. And my mother had the window open and she had her sewing machine in our little laundry room that was only large enough for a washer and a dryer and her sewing table. And she had sweat pouring down her side of her face and all on her upper lip. And she was just going to town. She was probably sewing, I don't know, a choir dress for me or something, or because she sewed all of my clothes until junior high. But, that was my first memory. And so when I got into home ec in junior high and we had sewing class, I struggled so much with that. I just couldn't get fit. I couldn't get, and I don't know if it was a brain block or what. I've since come to kind of figure out, since my mother's left-handed. So to this day, I iron backwards. I put the ironing board backwards from everybody else because that's the way I was raised with it. And my mother pinned backwards from righties, and she cut different than righties. And so I learned looking at her, not over her shoulder, but staring at her from the front. So I learned backwards and mirrored.
Wow. That's a brain teaser.
It really was. And to this day, I failed sewing in home ec. That was not my, making that skirt. And I just couldn't get it to work.
Did you want to do it?
Probably got a D in the assignment.
Did you want to do it? Like, was it, I really want to do this, I just can't, or just like, nah, I don't like this?
I don't remember being all that passionate about garment sewing in school. I do remember in the classroom that I was in, there were the stoves and the sinks and all that on the other side of the room, to teach you how to cook when they used to do that. Right. And boy, I couldn't wait to get over there. And I love to cook. I'm pretty good behind a spoon with a pot.
I love it.
So yeah. And my mother was a fabulous cook. I would consider that to be the only true professional training I've ever had in sewing. And I failed miserably at it. I did some home deck projects once I got a little older. And my son was on the way, and I was sewing his nursery and that kind of thing. But where I kind of honed my craft was literally sewing patches onto military uniforms.
Okay.
So yeah, in the military, they wanted it back then, $1.50 a patch to, one on each sleeve for your stripes. And I'm a retired master sergeant. So, then you had your name tape and U.S. Air Force and your command patch. And I mean, you could have 7, 8, 9 patches on any given blouse that you were wearing. And at $1.50, and I was a starving staff sergeant, there was just no way. So I did that myself. And then I quickly discovered that other people were, they'd rather pay me $1 instead of them $1.50. So
I love it.
Yeah, I was making, $10 or so a shirt and then I could knock out, 3 or 5 of them on a weekend, and there's an extra $40, $50. So yeah. I mean, back then that mattered,
Heck yeah.
It definitely mattered. So once I've done some costuming, and that's only because I had to for an event or something. And then I was watching, let's see, my first grandchild was on the way, and this was back in 2010, and I was making his nursery. And I wanted some custom bias tape to put around the sides of what they called a quilt. It was just a whole cloth with some crisscross hatching through it.
Right.
And I went out on this new thing called YouTube, and I was trying to see if there was a video out there of how to do that. And so I came across Jenny Doan from Missouri Star Quilt Company. They had just launched their business. And it was one of her very first ones. And I've spoken to her personally about it too. But, that was one of the things where as soon as I watched the video, she was such a good instructor. And I really liked what I saw. And that made me go, well, what else do they have out there? And the next one that came up, and my mother was not a quilter, any way, shape, or form. She said, I've got a blanket. Who needs more? I don't want to do that. But I think her idea of quilting is way different than today. She comes up from the 60s and 70s of quilting, and that was hand quilting.
Make a sandwich and tack it together.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't raised with any quilters in my family at all, unlike most. And so I was watching this video, and the next one that came up from Jenny said, look at this project behind me. This is so cute and it's so fun and you can do this. And I was hooked. And I just watched everything that they had that then. And at the time, I was a big fan of a company called Woot.com, WOOT. And the guys from Woot were, they're from Carrollton, Texas. And their whole claim to fame was this $5 shipping on anything, whether you bought a big screen TV or you bought a little bitty whatever, it was $5 shipping. And come to find out later, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the industry. and I was watching one of Jenny's sons give a business. He was at a business school, and he was giving a speech or a talk. And he said that they were also fans of Woot, and they started that $5 shipping regardless of whatever. And I thought that was really neat that the two companies that I really liked kind of modeled themselves together.
Yeah.
That's before Woot got bought by Amazon.
Right.
But, and those guys are living large now somewhere. But yeah, so I saw that, and that is exactly how I built my stash, was by Missouri Star Quilt Company was my homepage. Every morning I jumped on there, and they were getting into that, and they were revitalizing the town. And it was great. Just to be I've never been there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's such a cool story for sure. So I know
it really is.
You said earlier that, you considered your home ec class your only professional training ever. But would you say then that, because it's one of the questions I always like to ask, if you had a teacher or were you self-taught? It sounds like maybe Jenny Doan was your most significant teacher. Would that be fair to say?
Well, so Jenny Doan was my most significant teacher for quilting. And then came along Craftsy. And I was all over Craftsy. I bet you I bought $1,000 worth of classes from Craftsy for sewing and quilting. And I had asked my husband for an embroidery machine. Well, he actually asked me, do you want an embroidery machine? And I said, what am I going to do with that? And he bought me, this is years and years ago, and he bought me the Brother PE 770. That was my first machine, a little 5x7 hoop, Yeah. I had no clue. And it literally sat in my sewing room on a table behind me for 3 years. And then with Craftsy, when that came out, I started watching. I was like, oh, I've got one of those machines. Let me see how this all works. And that's when I got into embroidery. And I began to realize the instant gratification that you get from machine embroidery,
right?
Provided you know what you're doing. You can also have instant extreme frustration.
I was going to ask, how did that first machine embroidered project turn out? What'd you think of the result?
I didn't know at the time that your machine could only sew designs that would fit in that hoop. So I was in a quilt store one day, and I saw, it was called Cat's Meow from Lunchbox Quilts. It's an absolutely adorable wall hanging of these cats. And I said, oh, I want to make that. And it was really expensive. It was like $60 or $70. That thing's outrageous, back then.
Yeah, so designs used to be super expensive.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have to talk to Angie about that.
Brought it home. And couldn't get any of the designs on the machine. And I was like, why? What is wrong? It's not even in the manual that it says you cannot sew designs that are larger than a 5x7. And all of these were a 6x10. I had no clue. So right then, that gave me the first indication there's a huge gap in the education of machine embroiderers.
Yeah.
And that was, I started looking into how can I resize it to make it fit. And that's when I realized you cannot really resize machine embroidery designs if you don't have some really expensive, fancy software. I didn't know anything about any of that. So then I ended up selling that 770, which is unusual. I generally don't sell my machines. But then I got a Baby Lock Elegante 2, which gave me the larger hoop. Then I got a Quattro, a Brother Quattro, which had 2 upgrades in it. So it thought it was a Brother Dream machine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a little scanning camera. That was my first introduction to the camera system. And it just exploded from there. I couldn't get enough of. And that was about the time I think that in the hoop projects were starting to be something that were very cool.
Yeah.
That you would want to make. So,
more of that instant gratification thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this was back in 2019, and I had purchased a cover stitch machine, which is a sewing machine that will, if you look at the bottom of a knit shirt, like the shirt, a t-shirt, for instance.
Right.
It's got 2 lines of sewing on the outside, and then on the back, it's covered, and there's a like it looks like a serge stitch that covers the end. Well, I got that machine and I was like, well, I don't know how to use this. So again, I went to what I call YouTube University and I found a lady, Joy Bernhardt, who had just got one and she started using it. And over time, so this would have been like, 2012.
Okay.
2013. Yeah. Over time, she and I actually became online friends and then in-person friends. And she had a YouTube channel. And she's the one who encouraged me to start mine. So I did. And that's how I got on YouTube.
I love it. So, you started out, I guess your mom's sewing clothes. You took these home ec classes where I assume most of that sewing was either home decor or clothes. You got into quilting through Jenny and then bought yourself an embroidery machine. But what do you like to sew? What's the thing that you gravitate to and do the most of?
I like applique quilts. Okay. Those are my thing. Yeah. I specialize. So when I was in the Air Force, you start as an airman and then they get you into management. And then once you get into management, they teach you how to teach people. Mm-hmm. You have to take someone, the extremely uninitiated, and turn them into a productive and resourceful and responsible airman. And they teach you how to teach young people. And so I've done many, many years and years of instructing in the Air Force, not just one-on-one with people for OJT, on-the-job training, mm-hmm. but standing in front of a classroom and actually teaching people how to do any certain thing. And so the Air Force also made sure that I was trained as well in all kinds of technology. Mm-hmm. So I was around in the Air Force before computers came around, heavy use. And then by the time I was done with my civilian career, I was in charge of cyber security for the Air Force Personnel Center at Randolph Air Force Base. And so neck deep in computers and understanding how they think and understanding how they work and all of that kind of stuff of all different types. And so when I started this whole process, the machine embroidery uses the computer a lot, whether it's the software that you use to make the designs, mm-hmm. or it's the software in the machines to stitch them out.
Right.
And so one of the things, and I'm in the middle right now of doing a quilt by Lori Holt called Chicken Salad. And Lori uses a very different, unique method of appliquing these chickens on. She's got about a dozen chickens that are in this quilt. And I like to take paper applique patterns and scan them into the Brother Scan and Cut. And then that file that is created by the Scan and Cut goes into another software program called Simply Applique, which mm-hmm. is a module inside of BES4. And what that does, with literally the click of one button, that program turns that scanned paper image into a placement stitch, a tack down stitch, and a final satin or blanket or motif or whatever you want.
Awesome. So you're using that technology primarily in your applique quilting.
Absolutely. Once I figured out how to do that, I don't look at applique quilts the same ever again. The idea of putting it on with heat and bond and then stitch, stop, turn, stitch, stop, turn with a regular sewing machine, no way. I am not going to do that. That's why I'm power tools.
Come on, Becky. That's not therapeutic for you?
No, what's therapeutic for me is watching that machine go bzzz, all the way around doing a blanket stitch, and it is absolutely perfect every time. That's what's therapeutic.
I love that.
So because of the technology that the Air Force taught me and the way to embrace it and work with it and think outside the box, well, that didn't work like that. So what other way will that, work? And that's primarily what I do a lot on my channel. Is, there's a load of amazing quilters out there on the internet, and I'm not one of them. I'm not a fabulous, great quilter, but I carry my own with some embroidery,
But you can program it into the machine, right?
You betcha. Yeah.
No,
I'm not a digitizer at all. My mother, I mentioned she's left-handed. She's the artist in the family, and I am not. And that's why I went in the military, so they would dress me. I'm not good at matching patterns or fabrics or any of that. And I've made a lot of ugly stuff in my career. But again, but somebody, if I know what I like, and when I see it in a store, I can go, oh, I want to make that. And I found out over the course of having my channel, there are thousands and thousands of people like me out there that they don't know what to make either, but they see somebody making it. And I tell them, oh, here's a fabric kit. You can get your fabric kit here, so it'll look just like this. And you can go here and get your design and it'll look like this. And let's do it together. And they love it. And the greatest joy I get is seeing all of their projects pop up in our Facebook group or on Instagram or something that they've done themselves. And the amount of email I get from the 80-year-old great grandmother who says, I can't believe I'm using this software.
That's fantastic.
It really, really is.
Those skills that you learned in the Air Force have translated well, right? Yeah,
They did. Yeah, I was surprised. I guess going in was a good thing.
Tell me, through these interviews that I've done, I always realize that a lot of folks that are in this industry that love to create things with their hands tend to be gift givers of those things. Do you often give handmade things as gifts? And if so, does any particular one of those stick out to you that was particularly meaningful?
Well, I've donated a lot of quilts to, we've got a house down in a coastal house down in Port O'Connor, Texas. That's probably about halfway between Corpus Christi and Houston, right on the tip of the Matagorda Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a volunteer fire department down there. It's a little bitty town. It's just a little fishing village. And so I've donated quilts, man quilts is what I call them. I donate those to the fire department. They have an annual fundraiser, where you drive your car through and they shove a plate of brisket and beans in your window and they have a live auction and that kind of thing. And I do that. And then I also donate quilts there's an organization here in Texas called CASA. And they work with the foster children that are kids
children's
that are
advocates.
The foster. Yes. And they accept children's quilts and and I love making kids quilts. My grandchildren are 10, 8, and 5, but they're in Colorado Springs and they have loads of quilts already. And so I just, I'll donate to that because again, how many quilts does one person need? But yeah, I donate them either for other charities to make money with them or to give to someone in need. Is definitely what I do.
Such a prevailing giving spirit within our entire industry. That's another theme that I hear a lot about. So many good people do so many good things. I can't say it enough. Every time I talk to somebody within the industry who's made a career out of it, it's just one of the things I think sticks out is how generous the industry is in general. And it's one of the things that keep people in it. I look around and I mean, I've been in this industry for nearly 30 years. And,
wow.
It's like there's a lot of folks out there like that because I think it's just a bunch of good people, both on the industry side and, of course, our consumer base just seem to be sort of, I don't know, the salt of the earth kind of people.
They are. I think they are. Generally, people who like working with their hands are givers. I believe in the giving spirit, all of humanity. There's always another charity. There's always, they do. I greatly respect the Fat Quarter Shop because they do. Is it the Children's Miracle Network or they do a gift quilt? Yeah. Or Ronald McDonald. I can't remember. It's right off the top of my head right now. But at any time there's fires somewhere and people need quilts or whatever, you'll hear of a shop up in the great Northwest that's accepting all these quilts now because people have been displaced from their homes and that kind of thing. Oh, Make-A-Wish. That's what it is.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation. There you go.
Driving me crazy. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's true. Again, I'm not one of those people to just pile hundreds of quilts in my house. For what reason? I don't
get rid of those things.
Believe it or not, I'm a bit of a minimalist when it comes to that. Believe it or not, less inventory is
except
better.
when it comes to
your fabric. No,
are your sewing machines, right? You can't get rid of those.
Well, when I took you around the room here on the video portion, you notice my machines all have special purposes.
Yeah.
I like specialized machines. My dad was an aircraft maintenance guy at Randolph, and he was like, use the right tool for the job, girl. So that's why I have a different machine for piecing, and I have the multi-needle, and I have the single needle machines and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Cool.
Got to use the right machine.
So besides your sewing machines and your fabric, what are some of your favorite things to use in your sewing? Like, what is it that's sort of your nifty gadget, your thing that you just can't live without?
Oh, the scan and cut. Yeah. I think the scan and cut is I really admire what Brother is doing with the technology that they're using, because the newer scan and cuts that are out there, I don't have one of those. I've got the SDX 225. But Brother realized that creators want the ability to cut fabric. So the scan and cut originally was for vinyl and paper crafters. That's not me. I have zero desire to do any of that. But Brother got on board with the fabric crafter. And so I really like, especially those quilters that are having dexterity issues, as we all, will do someday. The scan and cut.
When those knuckles start getting kind of wider.
Right. Yeah. And, it's not always easy to run a rotary cutter. And so it precisely cuts out applique pieces. It will precisely cut out your quilt pieces and even draw a 1/4 inch seam allowance on it if you want. But to me, that really is a go-to tool in my sewing room. And then because I don't want to cut out applique pieces, that's not any fun. And usually when I cut it out, it looks like a 4-year-old did it with those little rounded tip scissors. So now the newer scan and cut models actually talk to the Brother Luminaire.
Oh,
and
nice.
That's amazing. So you can transfer designs back and forth to create applique from the Luminaire into the scan and cut, or take an applique shape from the scan and cut and bounce it over into the Luminaire and have that turn it into applique for you. The possibilities are endless. It's just incredible what they're doing with that. And I just love the technology, and I'm embracing it. And, I'm the first one to jump in and how can I do this? And how's that work? And how can I apply that in my sewing room? And, that's, you say what makes you sew. That's what really motivates me, is to play with all that tech and say, how can I make this work? Yeah.
Yeah, those machines have intrigued me ever since I first saw them come out. And it's like, man, I look at those and think, man, I would like to try that. Like that looks so neat. Like I want to be able to cut with that.
The cutting machine?
Yeah, right. The scanning cuts.
I had another cutting machine before this one. And, in the sake of being professional, I won't say what it was, but it didn't scan. And that's the trick right there, is being able to put fabric on a mat. First of all, to be able to scan in a paper pattern. And then the image comes up. You can also upload that to the Brother Canvas workspace, so you can play with it on your computer on a bigger screen if you want, and then download it again back to the machine for cutting. But then you can put the fabric on the mat and tell it, cut here. The machine takes up, and you're not going to miss part of your design because you saw it.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's a completely different technology from the other cutting machine brands that are out there. And I really, it's definitely a thing. And then the multi-needle changed my life. That's I've got the Brother PR 1055 Entrepreneur Pro.
Nice.
That's the new one. And
is that a 6 needle or a 9 needle?
It's a 10.
10 needle.
It's a 10 needle. Yeah. And when you are doing embroidery designs that have got, 6, 8, 10, 12, 10 threads max. And I've done some that have more, and I've actually done, and then this is the nerd in me. I'll create a spreadsheet to figure out which threads do I need to use last.
I love it.
So that I can run all 10 of them at once, and then I'll put the last ones on so that they stitch last, and I can do it all on one machine. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Too funny.
So, obviously you've had a couple of careers. You've liked to do, it sounds like, so many different things with sewing. how do you look at sewing in terms of how it has created opportunities that enrich your life? I mean, what's sort of next, or what is your big vision there? I mean, clearly this is more than just a hobby for you at this point. You're not just in this because you're retired and have nothing else to do. You're building something here.
I think so. Yeah. So I'm 8 to 10, 12 hours a day in this room. This is where I spend. I mean, it was worth the investment, according to my husband, to modify this. My sewing space used to be a 2-car garage. Nice. And now it is a full-on sewing studio that's 400 square feet. And you're right. What started out as a harmless little hobby, I think there's a T-shirt about that or something. But so goals, I want Power Tools with Thread to be known in every guild and quilt shop across the country. And I want to get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're listening, nice. Please subscribe. And just for the plaque, that's the only reason. YouTube sends you a plaque when you hit 100,000. After that, it's all downhill. No, and it's been amazing. And it's not just limited to in the sewing room. Anybody who watches my channel knows we purchased a motorhome. We've got a 2011 Winnebago tour, nice. And we have taken it last summer. We took it all the way up to Moscow, Idaho, and all along the way, stopping at quilt stores and learning about the people who make this industry go from the ground level. And it's amazing. I run into the neatest, most incredible people in this industry, and I like promoting their stores. I like promoting women-owned businesses that are usually those quilt stores are.
Right.
But I really like getting to know the people in the industry and how they started. So just like you're interviewing me, I interview them.
Yeah.
And it's more than just, when did you make your first quilt? I mean, we all know, everybody has a different answer, but I'm like you, I want to know what makes them tick.
Yeah.
What is it behind, and then they take me through their stores, and it's incredible. I've interviewed everybody from, I make my own hand embroidery thread from the alpaca out back to,
wow.
Yeah, to a lady who had a spinning wheel in her motorhome, ran into them, and then another lady, we were in Raton, New Mexico, of all places, and I thought it was a quilt store, and come to find out she had 7 or 8 little girls in there. She was teaching sewing for free in her store. Yeah, and so then from there, my viewers, several of them have packed up their cars with their own extra fabric and headed to Raton, New Mexico to take boxes of fabric and machines and all kinds of, and it's just such a great, great thing to do that. So April 24th, we're taking off again, and we are heading down to Key West.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
You'll find a lot of sewing stores on your way down to Florida. That's for sure. Yeah. All the way up and down the Florida coast. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. I can't wait. Yeah, absolutely.
You should hit up some of those folks to see if you can teach in their stores.
I'll be doing some demos in Schertz, Texas at Scrappy Quilter on April 1st. I've got that. Yeah. So they're doing a shop hop and asked me, that's my home quilt store, my local quilt store. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you kind of hit on this already, but I know, and you said it, and I always like to work this into the conversation, but there are so many accomplished women, especially in this business. I mean, there are some male folks out there that are known, for teaching in the sewing industry. One of our very own, Eric Drexler, and is an educator in the business and does a great job and is known. But I'm always so impressed by the number of strong, accomplished, smart women in this business. And I always like to ask, you mentioned Jenny Doan, but are there any other sewists out there, or people, maybe somebody that we don't even know, that really have influenced you along the way or helped you in some way along the way that just particularly stands out to you?
I think, well, I have to, because I come at this again, like you mentioned, differently than a hobby sewist. Okay. Your own Leanne Jones. She is with Selkie, and she and I have chatted, and just listening to her, to have people from a company like Selkie have faith in me to reach out to me is incredible to me. That validates to me that whatever I'm doing, not sure what it is, but whatever I'm doing, there's something there. And there's just, Deborah Jones. She works with Designs and Machine Embroidery.
Love Deborah, Eileen, longtime friends.
Yeah, yes. Eileen, she doesn't know who I am. She might, coming up, we're going to do an event. But, Eileen Roche is huge in the industry.
Yeah.
And
giant.
Giant. Yeah. Superstar, mega superstar. I was actually, that was one of the very first things I ever did on my channel was I had a subscription to Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine, and they came out with the free Trapunto table runner. And I wanted to do a video on how to do that. And so I emailed Dime and asked, would that be okay for me to demo how to make this on my channel? I think that might have been the first video tutorial that I ever did. And Eileen Roche, called me back on my phone. I about fell over. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're calling me. She thanked me for even asking the question, because that the theft of intellectual property in this industry is ginormous.
Rampant,
yes. And I just, and sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes people just want to be nice, but other times, yes, I know. Julie Trieb from Designs by Juju, she is an incredible businesswoman, and she owns a huge embroidery company. They just acquired Itch to Stitch. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's really neat. I've just been around them. And then I have very, very good friends of mine that are incredible, phenomenal quilters. And I learn from them. I learn a lot from them. And I love that they're a sounding board for me, that I can bounce something past them. What do you think of this? I love having friends that are honest with me, that say, no, that makes you look fat. You shouldn't wear that,
But they never tell you that, of course.
Yeah, they do. I ask them, does this make me look fat? She's like, maybe you want to try something else. I love it. But I mentioned to you before we started the recording, and everybody here will hear it first. I just signed a contract to be an ambassador and an educator with Grace Company.
That is wonderful. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's quite an honor.
I'm very excited about that. So I will be getting, I've heard nothing but amazing things about them. And I've had several people in the industry that I respect and admire tell me that we will be a good fit together. So they are looking for educators, and that's kind of my niche. And like I said, I'm not a great quilter, but I'm pretty good with using a robot on a quilt machine. I can do that. Yeah.
I love it. So tell me, is there something that you haven't done yet? I mean, we've talked about all sorts of disciplines here within the sewing arena, but is there a particular thing that's kind of on your sewing bucket list that you've yet to try and that you've been telling yourself, man, I really want to try this. I want to do that?
No, I generally do whatever strikes my fancy, Well, there's a ton of projects that I've got that I haven't done. There's that. I'm living the dream. I literally am living the dream. I mean, I got to go through a tour of Kimberbell of all places, and had Kimberly and her husband Ryan themselves take me through their entire warehouse. And that was incredible.
Another group of great people. You've run into all the good people out there.
I'm an industry nerd. I'm a fabric nerd. I'm a machine nerd. I'm an industry nerd. And I just really I want to know what makes them tick. as well. So no, there's not a discipline, I don't think, that, because I have zero desire to hand stitch. You will never see me with a needle in my hand doing that. I admire those people that can, but just the thought of binding a quilt by hemming, listen to me, binding a quilt by hand makes my fingers ache. But, some people get a lot of therapy from it. That's not me. I want to whip it through on the machine and get it done. I got other things to do and more fabric to play with.
You're one of those that likes to call handwork a 4-letter word, right?
Oh, man, that is not me. Yeah, it just no desire whatsoever. But no, I like playing with gadgets and all the machines and all of that. So I don't think so. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I want to get into that I haven't. I don't think so. No.
Well, how about this? When you aren't sewing, what might we find Becky doing? What do what would we see you doing on your social media that's not sewing related that you like to share with the world?
I generally don't put that on social media.
Oh.
No. Gosh, so much of my life revolves around this passion of mine. I'm the navigator when we travel. So okay. I'm the one who figures out, I'm the cruise director or the travel planner. Oh, I would love to do a cruise with my viewers. I would love to do an RV get together with anybody who wants to come and sew and embroider. And I have been in a conversation with the folks at All Brands, John Douthit.
Yeah.
He's a neighbor of yours there in Southern Louisiana. But to get anybody who wants to get together, and we'll hang out in the rally hall at an RV resort and just sew and visit and do projects and
make it happen, Becky. Make it happen.
Yeah, I'm on it. Why don't you set that all up for me? Would you mind? So
we can supply some materials for it, but
there we go. All right, I'm going to hold y'all to that. But yeah, so that is one thing I would definitely like to do. But yeah, so I'm right now I'm in the middle of doing the travel planning for down to the Keys and back home. We've got some places we need to hit. I'm very busy with the Daughters of the American Revolution. I'm a descendant of the founders of our country. So I'm the regent for my local chapter. So that keeps me civically involved and
very cool.
And real busy. Thank you. And then I've got a husband and 2 dogs, and that's, and my son's a pastor, and he has gotten into the business with us. So we have a small store site, and my husband likes to spin seam rippers out of acrylic. So he makes,
nice.
He has a lathe. And he does beautiful work, and so that's Power Tools with Thread. Can I plug the store?
Absolutely.
All right, that's powertoolswiththreadstore.com.
Do you guys have a wholesale business for that at all, or only selling retail? Yeah,
only selling retail stuff we make here at home. Yeah, I don't do any kind of purchasing of other wholesale things. So he makes the seam rippers, stiletto combos, and then I have gotten into trying to make cool things for your sewing room. So inspirational sewing, T-shirts and USBs for your embroidery machines.
Okay.
And they all say Power Tools with Thread on them, and coffee mugs and all that kind of stuff. Nice. And then my son is a woodworker, and he started making ruler racks.
Okay.
To store quilting rulers, and we can't keep them on the shelf. It's crazy. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, very cool.
Yeah.
So kind of always like to end the podcast with this one question. I've kind of always said as an industry that, we really aren't selling fabric and threads and notions, et cetera. But what we're really selling is this sort of feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes with creating. Would you agree with that? And if so, how has that sort of manifested itself in your own life through your sewing? I
didn't realize there was such a thing as an online influencer until I got a 1099 from Google. So I absolutely agree with you, but I like to think that what I sell is inspiration. I like people to see, I usually will start a video going, here, I made this and let me show you how to do that. Just like Jenny taught me. And I really like, especially I've heard heartbreaking stories of women who just lost their husbands or a child or something or a parent, and they are in the depths of grief or depression and really, really horrible things. And I remember, I'm an only child, and I remember when I lost my dad in 2014, it was sewing that got me through dealing with that in the initial aftermath of when he passed. There's a period of time, everybody knows there's a period of time after a death. It's about 2 weeks or 3 weeks long, where there's hurry up and wait for all of the processes that have to go through when people do that. And it was my mind being able to make my hands work at the machine and just mindlessly so much, but following a pattern, getting my hands, I was thinking about doing this instead of wallowing in my despair at the time, which will pass, but you need something to get you through that. And to me, when I get these things, I get letters, the most incredible letters from these women who say, I was lost and you inspired me to go into my sewing room and start again. And it just brought me back from a very dark place. That does something to me that you just could not imagine. And it's the most incredible thing. And so I like to sell inspiration. That's what I want, and have that inspiration, like you said, turn into something that brings happiness and joy.
Man,
so it's neat.
I can't think of a better way to end this podcast episode than on that note. We see that and we hear that so much from people that are in this industry, and I'm so glad to hear you say the same thing and to want to share that with everyone out there. That's exactly what we'd like to do with our customers, and so you're right there in that same spirit, and we love it. So thank you, Becky, for being on today and for sharing your story and all about your business. And again, just one more time so that our customers can know where they can find out more about you, about your business, and see all that you have to offer. The website is powertoolswiththread.com, correct?
Yes, that is my blog. And then you can go to YouTube's search and type in Power Tools with Thread, and I should come up pretty close to the Stanley or the Black & Decker right under that.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, awesome. Thanks again for being on with us today, and we hope to see you on the road somewhere sometime in the future.
Oh, that'd be my pleasure. Thank you, Jason, for having me on. I have just really enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun, and as I tell all of my viewers, you guys, go sew something.
Absolutely. Thanks, Becky. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Why Sew with Sulky. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and join us again for more fun stories that are sure to inspire your creativity. You can find more info and links for today's episode at sewingonline.sulky.com.